Hey, what's up, guys? This is Sanjay from the Freezer Podcast. If you haven't checked out Powers Comics, you're really doing a disservice to yourself. The one and only Neil Adams on June 26th will be coming into town from 4 to 8 to do autographs and possibly sketches. He's done Green Lantern, he's done Green Arrow, and many of your other DC comic heroes. So go on down to 2180 Southridge Road, talk to Dave and Kelly, tell them Sanjay and Matt sent you. It's Powers Comics. We are back. This is the Freezer Podcast. I'm Sanjay.
And I'm Matt.
You guys know what to do. Follow us on iTunes. Follow us on Spotify. We're there. We have every episode right away, pretty much the night of. Matt is a grinder over here with the podcast.
I try.
We're also on YouTube. As you know, we need to get more subscribers, so hit that subscribe button. Smash that like button. If you want to see us on a weekly basis, hit that bell because it's going to tell you when we get a new episode up. And also, follow this guy right here, Fred Thurston. Follow him on Twitter. He's at fthurstonxxii. You can also follow him through the Sweep Studios. He's got his iTunes show as well with the Sweep. You have him on Spotify, on SoundCloud, right? And is there anything else I'm missing? And YouTube, absolutely, yes, and YouTube, of course. So follow him. He's a great follow. You got to listen to his stuff. It's the close source. You got it right here. This is the source right here. You're hearing from him. You get all the stories of the legendary era of Vince Lombardi with his grandfather, Fuzzy Thurston. And, it's just so cool to hear these stories. Got chills on Matt and I's arms here just hearing it because, you know what, you've lived it. And not too many people can say that, as a grandchild. And, it's really cool. So thank you so much for your stories. Honestly, it's a huge honor to hear them.
I have a feeling I'm going to be telling these stories for the rest of my life. It's funny. My wife always tells me, she's like, you got to start telling different stories, man. And I'm like, crap, yeah, you're right. Like, I got it. And you know what the great part is there's a million of them. Like, I can come up with, I don't have to come up with them. I can just think of the many, many times that we've done crazy things as Thurstons, and I'll share them.
Well, I think you should keep telling those stories, because I think it's important to keep that era alive. I mean, really, you can speak to it. So I think, for every generation.
You're the voice of that era. Absolutely.
Yeah, every generation that comes up needs to know about the 60s Packers. So I think that's important.
Actually, I do have one question for you. Are you close to any of the children of those players? Like, are the grandchildren of those players, or maybe even their, is that something that kind of trickled down too, like with a lot of the other players?
Yeah, that's thank God for social media again. But I'm really close with Alicia Kramer. She's basically family. I mean, Jerry and my grandpa were super close. But Alicia's incredible. Was right by our side with everything. Him getting into the Hall of Fame was, Jerry getting the Hall of Fame was one of the most incredible moments. She's an incredible person. I'm friends with all of the Kramers. Leroy Caffey's daughter, Henry Jordan's daughter, Ron Koselnick's family. Trying to think of who else we're kind of close with. Max McGee's granddaughter I talked to for a while there. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, we all kind of stick together. We all kind of share stories. If one of us, goes through mom or dad's or brother or sisters, old photo collections, and we find a photo, we share it. There's actually a Facebook group. I think it's called 60s Packer Kids. And so we all kind of, share stories, share pictures, share moments, videos. I know they all follow me. They're all incredible people. They follow me, follow Sweep Studios. I have fans of Fuzzy Thurston on Facebook. I have the Fuzzy Thurston Foundation. I have a ton of stuff. So I'm always kind of, posting things here and there. I come across, funny pictures of them in big mink coats or, goofy time. I mean, that's the thing that, I think I take away the most from them. And I think when you are a family member of some of them, and I think family members of even today's Packers would contest that, we look at them in such angelic light. They're just people. They're just they're like the same person that we are. They just happen to do really cool things on a football field and make a lot more money than us. Um, but like even I've met a lot of people through the years, and they're always like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to meet Fred Thurston. It's Fuzzy's grandson. You're like royalty." And my wife like literally gags every time they say it. She's like, "What?" She's like, this is the same dude that like walks around in his underwear and like goes and looks out the window and like this guy's not that cool, and I'm not. Like, and I tell people I'm like, I am literally the most normal person in the world. I just happen to get really lucky and born a Thurston. But yeah, man, we're just all the same people. Like, and that's what's so cool about it. And like the stories and the pictures. You see pictures of my aunt Tori just posted a picture of when she was a kid, and she's sitting on Dick Butkus's lap in Florida because Dick Butkus had a place by my grandpa, and like it's just everybody like just mingled, like it wasn't a big deal.
It's the
And it's like,
fraternity,
no,
right?
that is a huge deal. That's a huge freaking deal.
It's a huge deal.
Right, absolutely. And
Yeah,
that's
like
cool. Go ahead, sorry.
no, it's just it's you're right. It is a fraternity. It's a brotherhood, and um it is a little chaotic, and it's something that I don't love about today's game. And I mean, we could get into it, but I think there's such a separation between players and fans,
I agree.
and I believe that rightfully so. There needs to be, just because of the way the world is today, and in certain aspects. But my gosh, when my grandpa was playing, I mean, during his playing days, you could go out to dinner and sit next to him and have a steak and talk to him, or you'd see him at the grocery store, or you'd buy a car from Paul Horning in the summer because he sold cars in the summer because he didn't make enough. That's just different. And I'm not saying that these guys need summer jobs, because we all know they don't, but to not have such a separation, I think it hurts. And I think Green Bay does that better than anything, in decreasing that because of the small city, feel to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, it'd be cool to live in that time era where you could literally, check out at a grocery store and behind you is Nitschke. I mean, you could literally look up in the phone book and there's Jerry Kramer, there's Nitschke, and drive by their house. That would never happen today, and that's unfortunate. And that's obviously because there's a lot of crazies. But yeah, man, I mean, just it kind of sucks. It kind of sucks to not have that same type of
We don't
Get
get
to know them for, like you were saying, them being normal people. Everyone just sort of sees them as these iconic figures on television or on the radio or in the paper, but they don't get to know the actual human being who's just a down-to-earth guy who happens to be really good at pushing
Right.
large men around.
And I will say that, I mean, at least maybe there's a little bit of different aura here in Green Bay, because I do feel that some of the current players, as we just saw with Jordy Nelson, as he left, and guys like Mason Crosby that you don't hear a lot about, they're really involved with the community. Like, as far as, when they're, not to the level of like selling you a car, but, it's close enough where you're like, man, if they're going to live here year round, I feel like maybe they should kind of be a part of the city, where they can walk around. And, you're right, though. It doesn't have that same feel. You're not going to be able to just be like, hey, how was, did you go check out Celebrate the Pier today? You're not going to be able to kind of say that kind of stuff to some of these guys because they're just so, closed off, I guess, in a way, because they kind of have to with
Right.
their status. But, with that being said, we do have obviously a new younger generation of Packers now. We have the OTAs. After the Bucks just lost this, depressing of a weekend.
Turn the page.
It was my birthday, so my birthday was on Saturday, Fred, and I went to the Brewers game and they lost, and then I go to the Bucks game. Or sorry, I didn't go to I watched the Bucks game and they lost, and I'm like, man,
Happy
this
birthday,
is,
buddy.
Yeah, happy birthday to me, right? And just obviously a sad thing there. Then the next morning you're like, all right, when's Packer season starting? Because at least we had the OTAs this week. We Andy and I.
Bart passes the next morning.
Oh yeah, right, exactly. Then Bart passes the next morning. It was
was-
just a tough weekend, believe me. It
well,
really
yeah.
was. Andy and I today we went to OTAs. It was kind of fun. It was nice. It was a nice day today compared to last
Gorgeous
week.
outside today.
Yeah, last week it was kind of cold and windy, but today was definitely a nice sunny kind of day, and the
Nice
players
little
were
light
out.
breeze.
Nice light breeze, exactly. They featured the kickers today.
I
That's
saw.
something different. Mason Crosby got to see it, live in action. The whole team was watching them kick field goals. He missed 2 really easy, like 20-yarders, which is kind
First
of
one was what, wide right.
wide right. Yeah, I was like, ooh. And then Finnegan, I think is his name, right? Yeah, he goes and nails like a nice little
Sam Ficken.
Ficken. Yes,
Yeah.
thank you. He lands a nice little 52-yarder today, or
Yeah,
50-yarder.
I
It was
think
a
at the
nice one.
35,
It really
40-yard
was.
line.
The kid has legs. So, Fred, okay, so we kind of talked about it last week with the defensive side, because obviously the coaches talked and some of the players interviewed, and OTAs, we gave the fans a little bit of an insight to OTAs, and from your perspective on when you kind of like look at what's going on. I know maybe sometimes you're able to catch it, sometimes you're not, but if the guys on Twitter, the beat, they're all over it. They tell you through Twitter pretty much like a play-by-play of what's kind of going on. But what are you trying to grasp from OTAs?
You're right, man. Twitter is crazy. I hopped on Twitter earlier and I was like, I'm not even gonna go. I'm not even gonna go to OTAs, man. I can literally play by play this entire way. OTAs are such a different kind of breed, and you kind of have to take it all with a little bit of a grain of salt. I think it's so easy to watch, and you see a guy burn a guy, and you're like, oh, that's it, man. He's in. Like, he's the next guy, and it's like, well,
Right.
hold your horses. But I think what you're trying to see is you're trying to see some technique. You're trying to see a burst. You're trying to see something that they do that separates themselves. You look at a lot of the veterans. Obviously, they don't have as much to prove, so I think that their motor's a little light. I don't want to say that they don't practice hard, but I think that it's just you want to see a little bit more from your rookies. You want to see your rookies taking OTAs as if they were to a pregame practice. I mean, they want to be going. And I think we kind of got to see a little bit of that from what I got to kind of gather from Twitter, where some of our rookies kind of showing up, some second-year guys kind of making some moves and showcasing a little bit. But again, you can't read it and really make a full conclusion on it. But yeah, I just think that you really look for those guys to make a standout move, a standout play, and kind of hope that not only here's my main point. I'm gonna just switch it a little bit on you here. I always revert to like Devontae Adams. Okay, obviously we know that Devontae Adams is top 3 receiver in the league. I don't care what anyone says.
Agreed.
He struggled to the point where for years I was on my show saying, pack his bags, get him out of here. He worked, and he finally started to get to that point. It brings me to a point like Jamon Moore, okay, a guy who came in last year, who I know a lot of.
Fred, I got to stop you for a second because this is Matt's guy here. So he just got the biggest grin on his face.
Thank you.
I've already written him off. So, yeah, you've just made him feel like $1 million. But go on.
Good. All right. Well, share that million with me. No, I look at like Jamon Moore, and it's like this entire offseason going into the NFL draft, going into free agency, everyone was spewing for this receiver. We need a receiver. And it's like, you guys, pump the brakes. We have to give everybody at least I'm a 2-year guy. I never give a full opinion on a guy after 1 year, whether that be good or bad. If he has a breakout year, that's cool. Let me see it again in year 2. If you have a crappy first year, you better make it better second year before I'm, really going to make a full judgment on you. Jamon Moore being the exact reason for that. And I think that he had such a down year, such a frustrating year, very similar to Devontae Adams. But it takes a couple plays at an OTA practice to get that confidence back. And when it comes to receivers who are the most diva of divas, you give them a little confidence, they can take that a mile.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Devontae Adams is the case in point with that whole scenario. And I kind of felt like last year if Jamon could have called in 1 or 2 of those catches, not just in camp or OTAs or in the season, it would have maybe propelled him on, but he never quite got there.
It's a confidence booster, right?
Exactly.
Like that's the thing.
You just need to see. You need to make that catch and remind yourself, I know how to do this. I can do this. I'm here for a reason. And once you have that moment, I think then that will springboard you on. And I think Adams had his moments there. And I'm really hoping Jamon Moore does too. And to your point, Fred, I think the reason they didn't draft, and I was one of the guys banging a drum for a receiver, But the reason they didn't is because I think they do have some confidence in these guys, and they want to see him out and give them a fair shake because they are on the roster for a reason, and he does have some talent. If they can get him going, that opens up the playbook even more.
Andrew, tell him what happened today.
Well, you see, we were sitting there watching. It was one on the first starters against starters.
It was
and then,
it was 7 on 7.
Second team there, and Kaiser was up there, and Jamon Orr's on the field, and Jamon Moore, beautiful route, nice fly route, got past the defenders and didn't catch the ball.
Was it overthrown?
It was overthrown by like 2 yards.
And there's basically his story right there, because you know what? It's either this throw is not good enough. Because I remember, even in camp last year too, there was some throws that maybe Rodgers threw and it wasn't really perfect like it was to someone else. And I mean, in the end, if it hits your hands, what does Madden say? You got to catch it, right? Yeah. But this one was a little bit out from his reach. We did get to see the play before that. MVS on a nice little go route, beautiful in stride catch from Rodgers, and the whole the whole side of the fence kind of just got up in a cheer.
I'm really excited for him.
Justin McCray's beautiful hands again.
Yes, if you guys remember from last week, we got to see Justin McCray make some pretty beautiful snags from Roger.
I'm starting a petition just so he can set up a touchdown play for him.
If Jace doesn't get a signing here, we might be seeing him maybe slim down a little bit and then move it to tight end. We'll see. But OTAs, it was fun to see. The big thing that Andy and I got out of this was the difference in play structure. I think if you guys don't follow Scotty Sports, you got to right now, because he just made a nice little promotion in his life with the Pro Football Network. He does an amazing job breaking down film. He's gone to scout school. You guys have to follow him. It's at Scotty Sports. But he just made a simple post that he showed the formation that the guys were running today, and it was just something completely different. I don't know how many times I told you today, Andrew, things that I had not seen from McCarthy. Probably 6 things today I said that I had not seen that in a practice or even in a I guess training camp practice or OTA or even mini camp. And it was so cool to see this, formation, but also the way that it just kind of flowed beautifully. Like the players, it almost felt like the players knew they'd been wanting this system for the longest time, whether they're watching their counterparts on primetime NFL. Like I remember Rodgers always says it. He watched that Rams-Chiefs game and he was like, that was pretty fun to watch. And if that's something that they might do, that's something that they're willing to study, put their heads in the books, and really put it on the field. And you really saw that. I saw Aaron Jones behind Devontae and Allison, and then you had MVS on the wide outside, and then you still had.
That was a tweet. Was that exact formation?
And you still had a tight end. I don't believe, was there 2 tight ends set on that?
Double tight end set up.
That is absolutely, and you had the motion from MVS going around behind Rodgers, faking a sweep, and it was there you go, a little plug in there for the sweep, and it was just something beautiful to see. And Fred, I want to get your take on this because I think you've seen it for the last 5-6 years now with Mike McCarthy, and what we just we've gone over it in our show of the staleness of the offense. I'm sure you have talked about it too, and if there's one thing that you're going to be really looking for, if it's not coming to OTAs or minicamp, maybe when you come over for training camp, is this the biggest thing that you're looking for, is what this system really will entail?
Oh, I'm jacked, man. I can't wait. You guys talked about it. I'm glad you shout out to Scotty Sports, Andy Herman, incredible guy. But you're right, man. The different motions, the different formations, different packages, putting different players around. I think that, and this goes to the receiver group that we drafted last year. We've got perfect components to run some really impressive and exciting, unique formations. And that's what I'm most excited. I can't wait. I can't wait to see how everyone is utilized. I'll tell you one thing that I'm kind of bummed about was Ty Montgomery. I know a lot of people weren't big fans of his, but I think in this system, he would have been a really good mismatch for a lot of teams.
Matt and I were really talking about keep an eye on Dexter Williams. Honestly, I think this guy will definitely have some sort of impact early. You know, a lot of times in McCarthy's system, and I don't know what it was about him and Dom Capers, they were always like, oh, we let rookies, you know, they sit for a while and they learn for about 7 weeks, and then we'll give them some snaps. But I think that's going to change, you know, with this new type of offense and a new type of like, you know, the way the NFL is being run now, you need 3 deep. You need 4 deep in receiver. You need 3 deep in tight end. Like, you need to keep changing these guys because, first off, these guys are fast. And if you keep subbing them in and out with fresh legs, that's just going to make the defense tired. You don't have the same kind of impact on, I mean, some teams do. They're lucky that they have a lot of depth on defense. But for the most part, their star players that get the plays done on defense can't keep up with the guys keep coming in that are fresh legs. And I think, you know, when you said about Ty Montgomery, I would have loved to see him in this offense. And I was banging on the drum for, you know, for a couple guys in the draft for running backs. I really was. And, you know, when the Bears took David Montgomery, I was really upset about that.
Yeah.
And that was like literally right before us, and that one upset me. But I was really pushing for Bryce Love too.
Love, yeah.
I really was. I thought he would. We love our Stanford players, and I thought he would have been perfect just to sit a year. But yes, going back to what you said, I really do feel like Ty Montgomery would have been a great fit.
Well, McCarthy. Initially, they had it right. They kind of used him as all over the place, and then he had that really huge breakout game as a running back and said, okay, you're a running back now. But I think they really missed out on truly utilizing his all-around game, which was he can catch the ball and run routes, and he's shifty and fast and can get through a line. You should have used him both ways, and I think I agree with you, Fred. He would have been a really cool component with LaFleur's offense.
Fred, when you look at the today, Brian Bulaga did not play today. They wanted to kind of get his reps a little bit less. The Spriggs played a lot more today. He came in, a little bit later. Same thing with Corey Linsley. He had his child's baptism. Yeah, so he came in late. So we got to see. Who was it today at center? Then was it Max? I'm trying to think of who our centers were.
But, I know they didn't use Elton Jenkins. I know they might have, but they didn't.
Yeah, and Matt said for sure, he's like, we need to keep Elton at guard. We're going to keep him there. But the offensive line, obviously, as impactful as this offensive scheme will be, the biggest thing will be the offensive line because, as you already saw last year, Rodgers got his ass handed to him. And he really never had time.
I think it's 49 sacks.
Yeah. Right, and the guy's not getting younger. He's not just going to get to roll out and scramble all over the place like these younger quarterbacks can. How impactful do you think, and how much are you going to be watching this O-line, especially with new additions like Billy Turner, and then the expectations of Brian Bulaga staying healthy because you got a rock solidified on the left tackle side, and Lane Taylor, hopefully he can show a little bit more than what he did last year. But what do you see from the offensive line?
I mean, that's a position I focus on. I have a little bit of knowledge just from watching, over the years and, kind of little tidbits that my grandpa's always told me throughout the years. And obviously it doesn't apply as much just because today's game is so different. Sure. But when you look at the offense line, yeah, you're right. D-Bach is incredible. Probably the best left tackle in the game.
Best chucker of all time as well.
Talk about embracing Wisconsin. Yeah, he's embraced Wisconsin to the full max. Appreciate that. I love that he did that. You look at center, I think Corey Linsley, vastly underrated. And then you look at that right side and you have, a guy like Jenkins coming in, who I think has shown some pretty good things so far in OTAs. Again, OTAs, so we'll see what happens in the real world. But I like his versatility. I've always said for the last few years, I can't remember which year it was off the top of my head, but the biggest mistake that Ted made in my book ever was getting rid of J.C. Treader, because I thought he was
absolutely.
Yeah, he was Swiss Army knife of an offensive lineman, So getting Jenkins, I think, is kind of the replacement for that. I feel like you kind of you draft 5 positions in one draft pick. I mean, that's an incredible feeling. But you look at Billy Turner, you look at Jenkins, and you look at Bulaga, and you look at Spriggs. And I always will kind of have a little thing for Spriggs because it was one of the first mock draft picks that I got right in the right round.
Nice.
I got like a thing for him because of that. So I'm really hoping that he makes some sense, but he probably won't. But he's on the last string, man. I mean, it's do or die right now.
He really is.
But yeah, you look at Balaga. Obviously, when Balaga plays, he's all pro. He's top shelf right tackle. Problem is, obviously, he hasn't played. This will be his first year coming into the season without having to rehab an injury during the offseason. So I think that helps. Whether or not that keeps him healthy, we don't know. We're never going to know. We don't know how injuries are going to pan out. I think by getting Billy Turner, not the answer for the long term, but I think he provides a good depth at both right guard and right tackle, and then having Jenkins as well. So you kind of have four guys you can kind of play around with on that right side, which was clearly the issue going into the offseason was that right side. I'm not too worried about that left side. The right side scares me, but we've got some depth and we've got some position players. We've got some guys who can make some moves and kind of get to it. But you're right. Offensive, I mean, you can have all the receivers in the world, folks. You can have all the running backs in the world. If we're not protecting Rodgers enough, and especially the way that Rodgers tends to play from how we've seen it in the past, we need to be able to block for him. Unless LaFleur is able to get to Rodgers and say, hey, we're going to start doing things like Tom Brady, where it's wham, bam, boom, gone, and you don't ever have to get hit, which I don't see Rodgers being like, yeah, let's do that. I don't want to be, versatile in the game at all. He's going to do what Rodgers does, and Rodgers is going to extend plays, and he's going to make things happen. So we need to have guys who can block for him. And I think that what they did, I like it. I don't love it, but I like Jenkins a lot. Turner, I'm still iffy. He's going to have to win me over, man. I don't love him.
He's an outsider, yep.
He's an outsider. We'll see what happens. They're paying him a lot of money to produce, so we'll see if he does. Fred, we have an awesome little segment here, and it kind of works nice with alliteration because it's Fred's freezer forecast now at this point. It kind of works out beautifully. So, you might have to come back on the show for this. But it's a nice little fun thing that we do here that we just throw some rapid fire questions. Colin over here does a great job with coming up with the questions for us. You're our special guest today, so you'll be taking part in this. So he'll read out the questions. I know you can't really hear him that well, so I'll repeat them to you. But we're going to start that up. We got a little bit of time left, and fire it away, Colin.
All right, so talking about like Bart Starr, obviously, is there anybody else from that era of the Packers that is not currently in the Pro Football Hall of Fame that should be in Pro Football Hall of Fame?
I don't even think we need to answer this question.
Yeah, Colin, that was a terrible first question, man.
Fuzzy.
Fuzzy's the answer there, folks.
Next.
There's only one guy. Next question.
All right, what happens first? Josh Jones is traded or Jay Sternberger signs?
Oh, all right. I like this. The way this is going, I'm actually gonna say my man Jace is gonna sign his contract, and I think Josh is gonna get. I think they're gonna try to force his hand to come here for the mandatory stuff, and then if he doesn't do that, then I think they'll move.
Yeah,
him.
June is basically his coming out moment. So, Fred, what's your answer?
Yeah, I'm going to go Jace, man. Josh doesn't have shit for leverage.
No, he's got nothing. He literally does.
He really doesn't. Exactly. You're on a rookie deal. Like, well, just come to camp. Just play it out. So yep. I'm gonna be the contrarian. I'm gonna trade Josh Jones before that because if we trade him, at least we get something for him, right?
You're either with us or against us.
So anyway, next question.
Will Mason Crosby be the kicker week 1 and week 17?
Well, okay.
That's a good question, actually. Week 1 and 17.
I've always loved Mason Crosby, and I think people have focused on his misses more than his makes. And I think
one game. It was one game.
He had a terrible Lions game last year, and yeah, he's missed a couple of game winners, but he's also made some really damn good game winners. And dating back, I remember his rookie year, first game as a pro, he had like a 52-yarder against the Eagles on opening day, and we won the game. So I'm going to say Crosby's going to be the man here.
All right, Fred?
I think he starts week 1. I think there's an opportunity for him to not start week 17. And I only say this because I desperately want to say frickin' fickin'. I love it. That week 16, that's going to be our segment going into week 17. So what's the next question?
Who will have a bigger year, Tanyan or Lewis?
Oh, Lewis made an amazing catch today. First off, it was another zip by Rodgers that just threaded 2 defenders. But it was a beautiful catch, and then everybody kind of got on, like all the players kind of rushed to him and gave him a high five. But
I feel like Lewis is gonna have the year because I don't know what McCarthy's problem was last year, but was he ever on the field?
no,
I mean, I feel like he never got.
He
in
was
the damn
brought
game.
in to block, and he didn't. I mean, I remember Nagler was saying, and if you're not following Aaron Nagler, you got to follow him as well. But he would always say, like, there would be a couple times where you did see Lewis miss a block, and he'd be like, well, his one chance that he got to show it, he missed it. And then, of course, they didn't bring him back out.
Well,
so it's like you need to get him, like, just like any player, he needs to get the
reps,
feel of the
get
game.
flow of the
Right.
game. It's like Eddie Lacy when they bring him in for a snap or two, and he'd stink. I'm like, you got to run him 10 times in a row before he gets going. So I think Lewis, and from what I hear, LaFleur is going to run a lot of 2 tight end formations.
12 personnel, pretty much.
So
yeah.
he'll be on the field a lot, and I think inherently then he'll get a couple passes thrown his way. And I think Tanyan's third. Depending on how Jace does, he may be 4th on the depth chart for all we know.
Right. I'm going to go with Lewis as well. Fred?
Love Big Bob, but yeah, I think Lewis with his connection with Hackett, I think being on the field, I think he'll get some.
I didn't think of the Hackett.
Yeah, right. Exactly. He's going to be always vying for him to stay. So, next question.
All right, my last question for you. What will be the most outlandish thing that the NFL does for the 100th season promotion?
Most outlandish.
Outlandish?
Most crazy thing they do to kind of promote this. Like,
They'll have a
the
commercial
weirdest
with
thing.
Vontez Burfict, Adam Pac-Man Jones, James Harrison, and Marshawn Lynch, all as the feature headliners.
That'd be hilarious.
That's, if you're thinking outlandish, that's the only thing I can think of. Just put the worst character guys. I mean, you can throw OBJ in there. You can throw Antonio Brown if you want. Throw them all in one commercial and say, hey, 100 years, here
I
we
will
are.
say this. Do you guys remember the Super Bowl commercial last year where they had all of the old NFL players kind of in like a banquet hall? Remember that?
Yeah, with a ninja.
Yeah. And guess what team wasn't represented in that thing? The Packers.
Oh,
So
you're
they're-
talking about the actual
Yes.
big commercial. Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
You
yeah.
can't talk about the history of the NFL, the 100 years of the NFL, with not starting with the Packers.
Right.
So the most outlandish thing they're going to do, even though we're playing the first game, is we're not going to be featured in a bunch of these commercials. That's what I can think of because the NFL is weird like that.
Fred?
They are going to get rid of the Sunday Night Football intro, the Monday Night Football intro, and replace them with Old Town Road by Lil Nas.
That's the one. That's the one thing that gave me to stop watching football.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Hey.
And it'll be the Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh God.
Folks, this has been an amazing show. We've gotten a huge opportunity that we will always be so grateful for to speak with the one and only Fred Thurston. As you know now, the grandson of Fuzzy Thurston. It's been such a pleasure for Matt and I. You know, we are definitely grateful for you to be on the show. We'd love to have you again. You know, we'd love to have you during training camp or even the season. So this is a great way for our Freezer fans to get to see royalty at its finest. You know, the one that walks around in his boxers and looks out the window, you know? So, you know, this is it. This is what you get. So just, you know, seriously, Fred, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a huge honor.
Yeah, man, I'm very honored as well. I'm a little pissed I told you that story, but no, it's good, man. I appreciate you having me on. I will come on anytime. Like I said before, man, I'm always ready to talk football. And next up, you guys got to come on the sweep.
Absolutely. We would love to do that. Freezer Podcast, guys, check us out on all your social media. For right now, though, I'm Sanjay.
And I'm Matt.
Go Pack Go.
Day ones, no time for fake ones. Got me, I got you. All dreams, they come true. Stay down till the end. Need me, I need them. Whole team gon' make M's. No time for fake friends. Too many people.